Imagine standing on a battlefield hundreds of years ago. Thousands of soldiers are standing in perfectly straight lines. Cannons are firing. Smoke fills the air, and the enemy is getting closer. Then the commander gives one order: advance. Thousands of soldiers begin marching forward together. But why would soldiers stand in such perfect lines when doing so could make them easier targets? The answer reveals how armies learned to turn thousands of individuals into one coordinated fighting force. Imagine being just one soldier on this enormous battlefield. In front of you are thousands of enemy troops, while smoke and chaos surround you. Your survival depends on knowing exactly where your unit is and what you're supposed to do. Now look at the army around you. Soldiers are arranged in perfectly straight rows, while officers stand in front giving commands. This organization wasn't simply for appearance. It was a practical way to control a massive army. To a modern person, this might seem strange. Why would soldiers deliberately stand so close together? Why not simply run in different directions and make themselves harder to hit? The answer becomes clearer when we compare ancient warfare with modern warfare. Modern soldiers can spread out, use cover, communicate by radio, and receive information from technology. Ancient soldiers had none of that. There were no radios, GPS systems, drones, or satellite images. Commanders had to control their armies using things they could actually see and hear: flags, drums, trumpets, messengers, and shouted orders. And on a real battlefield, this was incredibly difficult. Imagine thousands of soldiers moving in different directions while horses, weapons, smoke, and explosions create constant confusion. Without organization, an army could quickly lose control. That's where formation became so important. By placing soldiers into organized lines, commanders could turn a chaotic crowd into clearly defined military units that could move together. One of the most famous early examples was the Greek phalanx. Heavily armed Greek soldiers stood close together, carrying large shields and long spears as they advanced toward the enemy. The shield was more than personal protection. When soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, their shields overlapped. Each soldier helped protect the person standing beside him. Hundreds of soldiers could therefore create something that looked almost like a moving wall. Shields formed the front, spears extended forward, and the entire formation advanced as one. But if one soldier left that formation, things changed immediately. He no longer had the same protection from the soldiers around him and could become much more vulnerable. That's the key idea behind many ancient formations. The strength of the individual came partly from the strength of the group. Staying together could be more valuable than fighting alone. Straight lines also gave commanders something extremely valuable: visibility. From an elevated position, they could look across the battlefield and understand where their formations were located. Instead of trying to control thousands of individual soldiers, commanders could control entire formations. One unit could move forward, another could hold position, and another could protect the flank. Soldiers also used the people beside them as reference points. If everyone maintained the correct distance and direction, the entire line could stay organized while moving across the battlefield. But there was a major problem. Imagine trying to shout an order across thousands of soldiers while the battlefield is filled with noise. Most soldiers would never hear your voice. So armies developed special communication systems. Drums could create a steady rhythm, while different sounds could help soldiers understand when to move, stop, or change formation. Trumpets provided another powerful signal. A loud trumpet blast could travel across the battlefield and alert distant formations to an important command. And when sound wasn't enough, commanders could send messengers. A rider could carry an order from one part of the battlefield to another, connecting distant units. Flags provided another visual method of communication. Even through smoke and confusion, soldiers could look for their unit's banner and know where they were supposed to be. Then warfare entered the age of firearms. Soldiers began using muskets, and this created another important reason for organized formations. Early muskets were powerful, but they were slow to reload and relatively inaccurate. A single soldier firing alone couldn't always be relied upon to hit a distant target. So armies developed volley fire. Instead of relying on one soldier, hundreds of soldiers could aim and fire together, creating a concentrated wave of gunfire. Multiple rows could even fire in sequence. While one group fired, another could prepare or reload. The formation allowed the army to maintain a more organized rhythm of fire. The principle was simple: one soldier might miss, but hundreds of soldiers firing together created a much greater chance of hitting something in the enemy formation. There was also a psychological advantage. A huge formation of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder looked intimidating. It appeared powerful, disciplined, and difficult to break. Imagine being on the opposite side of the battlefield and seeing an enormous army marching directly toward you without breaking its formation. The sight alone could be terrifying. But maintaining that line required enormous courage. A soldier might be frightened, exhausted, or tempted to run. Yet the formation demanded that he stay in position. That's why military drill became so important. Soldiers repeatedly practiced standing in line, turning, marching, stopping, and responding to commands. The goal was to make coordinated movement almost automatic. Soldiers learned to react together instead of allowing fear or confusion to separate them. Even the simple act of stepping forward at exactly the same moment had a purpose. Synchronized steps helped soldiers maintain their spacing and keep the formation intact. Drummers often helped create that rhythm. Their steady beat gave soldiers something simple to follow: left, right, left, right. Multiply that rhythm by thousands of soldiers, and individual footsteps become one enormous coordinated movement stretching across the battlefield. By the 17th and 18th centuries, European armies had developed highly disciplined infantry formations. Soldiers trained constantly to move and fight as organized units. And infantry wasn't the only part of the system. Cavalry and artillery also had specific roles, and commanders had to coordinate all of them at the right moment. From above, a battlefield could look almost like a giant strategy board. Infantry lines, cavalry formations, and artillery positions all had to move according to the commander's plan. In that sense, an army behaved almost like a machine. Each formation was one moving part, and if one part moved incorrectly, the entire system could be affected. A single unit moving too early could create a dangerous gap in the line. That gap could expose nearby soldiers and give the enemy an opportunity to attack. Fast-moving cavalry could be especially dangerous when they found such a weakness. That's why maintaining a continuous line was so important. But eventually, technology began changing everything. Firearms became more accurate, more powerful, and faster to reload. Improved rifles meant soldiers could fight effectively from greater distances. There was less reason to pack hundreds of men tightly together. Then came weapons such as machine guns. Against this kind of firepower, dense formations could become extremely dangerous because too many soldiers were concentrated in one place. World War I demonstrated this transformation dramatically. Soldiers increasingly relied on trenches, cover, and dispersed positions instead of openly advancing in huge straight lines. The battlefield had entered a new era. Artillery and automatic weapons could devastate large concentrations of troops, forcing armies to rethink traditional formations. Over time, military tactics evolved from ancient shield walls to musket lines, to trench warfare, and eventually to the dispersed formations used by modern armies. Modern soldiers generally move in smaller groups and maintain greater distances from one another. They use terrain, buildings, and other forms of cover whenever possible. And unlike ancient armies, modern soldiers can communicate using radios and receive information from aircraft, drones, satellites, and other advanced systems. Modern command centers can combine maps, communications, and surveillance information to coordinate forces over enormous distances, something ancient commanders could only dream about. So, if straight-line formations became outdated on the battlefield, why do soldiers still march in them today? Because marching has taken on a completely different purpose. Modern ceremonial marching demonstrates precision and discipline. Every soldier is expected to maintain the same posture, pace, and movement. During a large military parade, hundreds or even thousands of soldiers can move together in perfectly synchronized formations. It's a demonstration of coordination on a massive scale. But that precision doesn't happen automatically. Soldiers practice the same movements repeatedly until the timing becomes almost instinctive. Marching together also reinforces teamwork. Instead of appearing as separate individuals, the soldiers become visibly connected as one unit. It's a powerful symbol. Individual people can accomplish something together that would be impossible for one person alone. There is also a psychological effect. Humans naturally respond to rhythm and synchronized movement. When hundreds of people move together, the result can create a powerful feeling of unity and strength. That's why the straight line has survived through military history. The ancient purpose may have changed, but the symbolism of disciplined formation remained. The battlefield evolved dramatically, yet the tradition of marching in formation continued. What was once a practical combat technique eventually became an important military tradition. Today, a perfectly straight military formation represents precision, discipline, coordination, and control more than battlefield survival. Thousands of soldiers moving together create a remarkable visual effect. Many separate individuals appear to become one organized force. So the next time you see soldiers marching in a perfectly straight line, remember what you're really seeing. You're looking at the legacy of an ancient solution to the problem of controlling thousands of people in chaos. The straight line was never simply about looking impressive. It was about turning individuals into one coordinated force, and that simple idea helped shape warfare for centuries.